All right, good evening. Thank you for attending this public information meeting on the FWC's draft management plan for Lake Okeechobee. Today is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. My name is Jason Houck with Inwood Consulting Engineers. We've been contracted by the FWC to facilitate this public information meeting and assist in the development of the draft management plan. I'm joined by several staff members from the FWC. At this time, I'd like to have those staff members introduce themselves and describe their role on Lake Okeechobee and this plan. I'm going to start with Ryan Ham.
Hello folks, I'm Ryan Ham, based out of Gainesville. I'm overseeing the lake management plans on a statewide level. We're also working on the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes and Harris Chain of Lakes plans at the same time. So thank you and welcome.
Who's next?
James Erskine, Everglades Coordinator. I lead a team in the agency handling Kissimmee, Okeechobee, Everglades ecosystem projects. Thank you, welcome.
I'm Baron Moody. I'm the Regional Administrator for the Division of Freshwater Fisheries Management, so it's my team and I that are responsible for things that are freshwater fishing from, essentially from the lake south.
Thank you. Ed.
I'm Ed Harris. I'm with the FWC Invasive Plant Management Section. I work mostly on the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes, but I supervise the staff that is in South Florida, and I've been down here a lot recently helping to fill in some of the gaps.
Sarah Palladino, I work with FWC's Invasive Plant Management Section. I'm the regional biologist over in Lake Okeechobee.
Hi, I'm Danielle Kirkland. I'm also with the Invasive Plant Management Section, work statewide, and thank you everybody for coming out tonight.
Do you want to introduce?
Tyler Beck, I'm the Sound Conservation Coordinator for FWC.
And Alyssa Jordan, I'm with the Aquatic Habitat Restoration and Management Section, and I've been on Okeechobee for about 15 years.
Thanks. Before we go over tonight's meeting and summarize the draft plan, I want to mention a few things for this meeting. First, this meeting is being recorded. The audio and video for this meeting will be available on YouTube in the next few business days. A link to that YouTube account is provided in the next few slides. It will also be available on the FWC's Lake Management Plan webpage. If you would like to make a comment, we have comment forms in the back for you to write on at the tables, both on the side and in the back, and Morgan has some over on the side as well. Please see Morgan for those. If you would like a speaker card as well, she has those that she can provide for you. You can leave those with us tonight or take them home and mail them or email them to Inwood, our address, as well as the email address is printed on the form. We also have speaker cards you can fill out. At the end of this short presentation, we will call on you to provide your comment or feedback on the plan. When making a comment, we ask that you be respectful to others and to the FWC staff. So I'd like to go over tonight's agenda. We will identify the purpose of the public meeting, present the FWC stakeholder promise, go over the project schedule and where we are in the planning process, present the stakeholder engagement completed to date, quickly review the draft plans, and finally take comments and feedback on the plan. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present the draft plan and receive feedback only on the contents of the plan. Again, I'd like to emphasize that this meeting is about the draft plan and how it can be improved. I'll review the project schedule. Where did the process start? Where are we now? How can stakeholders stay involved? And when will the plan be finalized? I'll briefly go over the stakeholder engagement and some of the feedback Inwood and the FWC have received. I'll present the outline of the draft format and some of the highlights. And most importantly, provide time for stakeholders to provide feedback on the plan. Overall, we're trying to determine if we've hit the mark. Did we miss something? Do the goals and objectives seem reasonable? Are there areas of the document that can be improved? Hopefully, you've had a chance to review the plan and look over the goals and objectives in the document. A copy of the document can be found on the FWC's Lake Management Plan website. I'd like to restate that this meeting is being recorded. A link to the presentation and audio will be available on the FWC's Lake Management Plan website and also on our YouTube channel here in the The FWC Stakeholders Promise was presented at the first kickoff meeting in February of 2020. This promise has guided the stakeholder engagement process throughout the development of the plan. And I'd like to go ahead and read the stakeholder promise to you. We promise to provide opportunities for stakeholders to provide input into the development of the Fish, Wildlife, and Habitat Management Plan. We promise to consider all stakeholder input and recommendations for lake management goals, objectives, and actions. We promise to address and balance, where feasible, the needs of all stakeholder groups and FWC management guidelines for the lake. We're committed to a plan that consists of stakeholder support management actions that are within our jurisdiction, and we will make the final decisions on content of the plan. The stakeholder promise is presented also in Chapter 1 of the plan. So, the first kickoff meeting for the plan was held almost 2 years ago. Since then, FWC has held several input workshops and one-on-one interviews. An online survey was conducted in late 2020 and early 2021, around the time that Inwood was contracted to help the FWC facilitate the public engagement and help prepare the draft plans. Draft goals and objectives were prepared in the spring of 2021. Those were published on the FWC's Lake Management Plan webpage for stakeholder review and comment. Then, FWC and Inwood held 8 focus group meetings, both in person and virtually, to gather feedback on the draft goals and objectives. The full draft plan was made available on the FWC's Lake Management Plan website in November of 2021, and both FWC and Inwood have received comment and feedback on the plan. This is the 3rd public meeting for the plan and the 2nd since the draft plan was made public. FWC and Inwood will accept stakeholder feedback on the plan until March 16th of 2022. FWC and Inwood will review the stakeholder feedback and finalize the plan during the spring of 2022. A final public meeting to present the final plan will be held in early summer of 2022. The draft plan that's available on FWC's website was based on a lot of stakeholder feedback. In total, FWC conducted 29 interviews and 8 workshops. The online survey in late 2020 and early 2021 had 2,139 respondents. FWC and Inwood also hosted 8 focus group meetings and up to 17 stakeholders per meeting. The purpose of the plan will be to inform planning and guide future management decisions at the FWC. Based on the stakeholder feedback, the draft goals and objectives were divided into 3 focal areas. The first is fish and wildlife management, the second is plant and habitat management, and the third is communication and interagency coordination. Stakeholder input included concerns on muck accumulation, long-term trends in habitat quality with a particular focus on chemical treatment of invasive exotic plants. FWC has incorporated that input into goals, objectives, and actions that reduce overall herbicide use, investigate new technologies for harvesting, and seek to provide high-quality fish and wildlife habitat. In preparing the plan, we tried to think about a few things. There may be a casual reader who will want the cliff notes or a brief summary. For this reason, we provide an at-a-glance section that gives a few key facts about Lake Okeechobee. The goals and objectives are the key components of the plan instead of burying them after the state of the lakes and other information. Stakeholder feedback indicated the goals and objectives should be near the beginning of the document to provide the reader with the important information first. The State of the Lakes chapter provides the relevant background information to the reader. The intent was to provide just enough information without writing a thesis on the topic. Stakeholder feedback included that communication with stakeholders was very important and sometimes lacking. This chapter highlights some of the ways the FWC communicates and engages with stakeholders and how that ties in with the communication objectives. The last chapter describes fish and wildlife and habitat planning process for the plan, and it will be updated for the final plan. So Chapter 1 sets the stage for the plan. The chapter includes a short background on why the FWC chose to prepare a management plan for Lake Okeechobee. It also includes the mission of the FWC, purpose of the plan, promise to stakeholders, and the FWC's authority. The FWC mission, managing fish and wildlife resources for their long-term well-being and the benefit of the people, and their authority limit the scope of document management, limit the scope of the document to managing fish and wildlife resources. I want to emphasize that while the document does mention water quality and water level, their management is not within the authority of the FWC. Chapter 2. Based on the stakeholder feedback, the goals and objectives were divided into 3 focal areas. Again, those focal areas are fish and wildlife management, plant and habitat management, and the communication and interagency coordination. Goals were written to describe the desired future conditions on Lake Okeechobee. So focal area 1 includes 2 goals with supporting goals and action items. We've listed the goal here and we'll touch on each this evening. The action items are more numerous and have been included in the draft plan but will not be on this presentation. Goal number 1 is to monitor the adult alligator population each year to ensure a desired minimum target of 17,800 individuals. That was the first objective under goal 1. Goal number 1 is native wildlife populations on Okeechobee are sustainable for the enjoyment of future generations. Under this goal, there are the following objectives. Monitor the adult alligator population and then direct habitat management in the littoral marsh every year for the Everglades snail kite. Continuing under goal number 1, we have objective 3 and 4. Objective 3 is to monitor bird populations within the littoral marsh. And objective 4 was to promote hunting activities in all habitats across the lake. Still under goal number 1, we have objectives 5 and 6. Objective 5 was to create a waterfowl energy day model. And objective 6 was to support early detection and rapid response programs that identify and remove invasive exotic wildlife. Goal number 2 is fish populations in Lake Okeechobee are indicative of a healthy ecosystem and provide for continual recreational and commercial opportunities and includes 6 objectives. Objective number 1 deals with relative abundance of largemouth bass. Objective number 2 is similarly written for black crappie. Objective 3 is maintain a 3-year average abundance catch of bluegill, and objective 4 addresses the trophy catch program. Objective 5 addresses non-native species within the lake, and objective 6, similar to goal number 1, is to support the early detection and rapid response programs and identify exotic and invasive species. Goal number 3 is native habitat within Lake Okeechobee optimizes fish and wildlife resources, access and navigation, costs and budgets, stakeholder input, and includes 2 objectives. The first objective deals with SAV vegetation, and the second objective has several sub-objectives underneath it, basically dealing with recovery and the comprehensive Everglades restoration program. Goal number 4 is invasive plant cover in Lake Okeechobee optimizes fish and wildlife resources, access and navigation, cost and budget, and stakeholder input, and includes 4 objectives. Objective 1 is to increase mechanical harvesting. Objective 2 is to maintain invasive floating plant cover at a maximum, ideal maximum. Objective 3 is to manage invasive plants to achieve interim targets that are identified in the recovery document for CERT. And objective 4 is to maintain access and navigation at boat ramps and navigational channels. Goal 5 is to promote effective communication with interagency partners to highlight fish and resources on Lake Okeechobee and the larger watershed. It includes 2 objectives. Objective 1 is to ensure that fish and wildlife resources are being adequately considered by other agencies during their planning activities. And objective 2 is to utilize those partner agencies' expertise in furthering FWC's mission of managing fish and wildlife resources. Goal number 6 is to promote the efficient and effective communication with stakeholders regarding fish, wildlife, and habitat management on Lake Okeechobee and includes 4 objectives. The first is to improve FWC's online resources. The second is to work with the partners to build positive advocacy at the local, state, regional, and national levels. Objective 3 is to host biannual meetings, both in-person and virtual as available and as necessary to engage with stakeholders and exchange information. Objective 4 is to then promote an open dialogue between FWC staff and those stakeholders. Moving into chapter 3, which is focused on the state of the lake, provides a brief background on Lake Okeechobee. It's not meant to be a thesis, but instead contains an overview of the system. This includes the history of the system, of the watershed, including some information on water levels and water quality. Fish and wildlife that occur on Lake Okeechobee, this is not a comprehensive list, but rather provides a summary of certain species with existing management plans and other target species. Also addresses recreation and special initiatives occurring in South Florida. Now, a number of stakeholders wanted to know more about FWC's communication strategies, which are covered in chapter 4. The FWC uses a variety of ways to communicate strategies such as their website, social media, email, and outreach and education. In addition, the FWC conducts a tremendous amount of interagency coordination between various local, state, regional, and federal agencies to conduct a variety of management activities on the lake. Lastly, Chapter 5 provides the background and information and stakeholder engagement that was used to develop the goals and objectives that are contained in Chapter 2. This chapter summarizes the various engagement opportunities identified on the project schedule, including the initial kickoff meeting, workshops, interviews, surveys, focus groups, public information meetings, etc. The next steps will be collect stakeholder feedback. Again, if you'd like to speak tonight, please fill out a comment card and we'll call on you shortly. And Morgan has those she's holding up if you haven't seen that already. If you'd like to provide a written comment, we have comment forms and the tables on the side and in the back, and then Morgan has some as well on the side. You can submit those today in any of the boxes or to Morgan, or you can mail them in. And Inwood's mail and email addresses on the form itself. For those watching on video, you can submit comments to the lake email and the contents on the next slide. The next steps are to gather comments through mid-March and work on revising the finalizing this plan, and then the last public meeting will be in the spring of this year. This is the contact information that is provided both on the website and in the plans itself for the Lake Okeechobee system, as well as that is the website address for the Lake Management Plan document. So with that, we're now going to open the meeting to comments and questions. If you haven't already filled out and turned in a speaker card and you would like to speak, please see Morgan or myself and we'll get you one. I want to add that we request that your comments be directed towards the plan and the ways the plan can be improved to guide management. Inwood staff will facilitate the comment session, and I will direct applicable comments to FWC staff as needed. Thank you again for your time and interest in attending the presentation this evening. With that, we'll take a short break. Any opportunities that you may need for a bio break, as well as if anybody wants to fill out a speaker card and hasn't, please do so now, and we're going to start compiling that and beginning that process. All right, are there any speaker cards that I don't have? All right, great. So we're ready to start the public comment period. If everybody could take a seat, we'll go ahead and get that started. So I've got the speaker cards that were provided. When I call your name, East Tennessee, I'm going to hope that I pronounce everything correctly. Please come up to the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes, and hopefully we'll hear everything you need to say. So the first speaker I have is Glenn Hunter.
Well, I've got a couple of things I'm concerned about. Number one is the spraying. I've been in business here since 76, 77. Back in 94, 95, I went and got information. I got the acreage on the number of acres sprayed from water management. I used to go over there every month. I was with a guy named Nat Reed, and I represented him here. In the 2-year period, it said at that time, and I think it's much greater now, we sprayed actually 22,603 acres. And I'm not going to go through each one, but here's what this done. This 22,603 acres sprayed in just 2 years released 1,392,375 pounds of phosphorus. It released 3,955,600 pounds of nitrogen. It put back 791,122 tons of dry matter on the lake bottom. Now, if this was something that we could not possibly control, it would be one thing. We have a situation here that I firmly believe that a big percent of our hyacinths are not grown in Lake Okeechobee. Somebody here ought to be able to tell me how many miles of canals, agricultural canals, do we have feeding into Lake Okeechobee? I heard somebody was ahead of this particular thing. But the one thing that kind of convinces me of this, particularly, I'm not on the lake as much as I used to be. I'm 90 years old, you know, so things happen. But here a few years back, you go out there, and in the spring of the year, when you got started in the season, you had hyacinths everywhere. You had spray boats everywhere. By the time you got into next spring, you were trying to find a hyacinth you could spray. Now this tells me one thing, they're not growing on here. We're exporting these in here. We have got canals that control every bit of water into the lake except Fish Eating Creek. And they've got a bridge there that really would make it easy for harvesting. You know, you go up to the lock at Harney Pond or Indian Prairie and look, and as far as you can see would be hyacinths, floating grass in there. You go in there and, you know, 2 weeks later, it's all gone. You know where it's at? It's all in the lake, and everybody's out there running around with a spray gun getting it. Now, this is kind of like, to me, like a rancher that gets his cattle in to vaccinate them. He gets them all in the pen and everything. He opens the gate. He lets them run over 500 acres out here. Then he runs them down one at a time. Why in the world that we are letting these hyacinths enter our waterway? We have them locked behind a lock. We've got a weird deal up there that's maybe 30, 40 feet wide. You open the lock, you don't have to run them down. The water brings them to the conveyor system. You put them up on the hill and you haul them off. And if anybody can explain to me why that we're bringing this much, every canal in around Okeechobee that's farmed, it's not agriculture's fault. I mean, any place you've got a canal like this, you're gonna have hyacinths. And I don't know this for a fact, but I would almost bet you money that the hyacinths that come in from these cows are much higher nutrient laden than ones that you grow in the open lake, because they're at the source of all the fertilizer that's doing this. Now we're talking about all of doing away with some of this stuff, that phosphorus and all this for wheat growth. I just, if someone could explain to me why you're not doing something about this, I'd like to have an answer. Who handles the weed deal here? The floating vegetation.
So I'm going to briefly answer that. You know, usually goes into cost and logistics, but that's a good suggestion of something we can investigate and include potentially as an action in the plan.
I'll tell you what, I'll bet you money on, you put a firm in here. I used to work in hay equipment and heavy farm equipment. Look at what they do with right now with the cane on the harvesting of it. You get somebody in here, they'll take that stuff out and put it on the hill a whole lot cheaper than you're doing spraying and not have it killing our lake.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Newton Cook.
I promise you, I did not stop at the bar on my way here. The vertigo has been really bad since my second shot almost a year ago. Those of you who know me pretty well have been listening to what I've been saying for the last few months. Nothing's good is happening for Lake Okeechobee right now. Nothing good is happening for Lake Okeechobee. It's not the FWC's fault, mostly. The FWC does what they can. But they have the Corps managing the levels of the lake, and we all know the levels of the lake have a lot to do with the ecology of the lake. And then we have Mother Nature. And then we have the Water Management District. And of course, the spraying is a big problem. Too much chemical going in the lake. How we change that is going to be interesting, because I firmly believe there always will be some spraying, but we need to reduce the chemical. We have two big controversies going right now. Lonesome. Lonesome keeps the lake too high, too often, and too long. Even when they put Lonesome out, the Corps' sentence was not helpful for Lake Okeechobee. They even said it right in the presentation. Now what are we doing managing the lake, Lonesome, when it's not good for the ecology of the lake? Admittedly so, not too bright. Two big pollution problems. We have 500 tons of pure phosphorus coming into the lake from the north every year. 500 tons, that's pure phosphorus. You can take a pound of phosphorus and blow this building mile in the sky. That's how powerful that stuff is, but it's going into the lake as a nutrient. And God knows how much nitrogen. We got to solve the problem of BMPs north of the lake. And then the muck in the bottom of the lake, which has been collecting at 500 tons year after year after year after year, is stirred up in the lake. It's algae blooms. So, boy, that's a big surprise, right? What are we doing to get the muck out of the bottom of the lake? Zero. We need some deep injection wells in the bottom of that lake and those sinks, taking that muck out of the lake. It'll take 50 years of them running 24/7, 365, because we've been putting it in the lake for 50 years. Thank you for what y'all guys do. You got a tough job. But we need some hydrilla in the lake for the ducks. That's my last comment.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We appreciate you coming out. Sorry, Dennis Lee.
My name is Dennis Lee. I live in Lakeport. I have been for the last 11 years. I've fished all my life. I guided for 16 years. I was an airboat captain giving wetland tours for 5 years. I know quite a bit about the water and what lives in the water and what natural resources are. Natural resources are a God-given gift to mankind to live off of. And He expects us to be stewards of what He's given us. That means take care of it, nourish it, value it, and do all you can to keep it going the way He intended for it to go. But somehow, man has gotten smarter than God. Greed. Greed is feeding the chemical addiction that the FWC has. It's not just Lake Okeechobee. I've fished all over this state. Chemicals are destroying the state of Florida's waters. And what really irks me is I hear the Okeechobee toxic release. We have to stop the toxic, harmful releases from Lake Okeechobee. You hear that all the time. Well, how about let's just say stop the toxic, not the releases. Water is life. Clean water is life. The health of a lake can be displayed by the bird habitat, the bird life. Okeechobee, the birds are gone. There used to be white pelicans, seagulls, shad, plenty for everybody to eat, fish all over the place. And now you got a few stragglers that's hanging around hoping they can get a fisherman to have a shiner laying on the surface they can swoop down on. The natural resources are being destroyed. I would like to know who in the FWC has the authority to say, let's stop the spray. Number one, there's been a industry created out of aquatic invasive plants. Like we got to kill these things because they bad. Yeah. That's bull. That's bullshit. Plants are part of the natural system. And without the plants, you don't have the food chain. But anyway, I could go on and on. I'm beyond the fish. I'm beyond the cows coming down to the Kissimmee River drinking the toxic water. I'm concerned about human beings. You cannot spray toxic chemicals daily by the thousands of gallons in our fresh waters and not expect dire consequences. You just can't do it. Read the labels on this stuff. What the label should say is after 1,000 stakeholders tell you to stop, you should stop. You know how they have the side effects of the drugs, medicine, blah, 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 then you need to stop. The spraying needs to stop. It's blown way out of proportion. A few plants is good. They're not bad, they're good. They promote life. There's your grass shrimp, your minnows.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I could go on and on. You would not believe what I've seen on Lake Okeechobee. You just wouldn't believe it. I fish. I have spent more time in a boat probably in 1 year than all of y'all put together in your whole life. And you're making the decisions.
Yes, sir, I appreciate your time. I just want to make sure that we do get to everybody tonight.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for
You
coming.
know, I mean, you can tell that I'm upset.
Yes, sir.
It's bad business, okay? It's bad stuff. You need to stop the spraying.
Thank you. The next name I have is TL Hightower.
This feels like deja vu, only this time I can see some of the faces and close, and it was mostly masked. So anyway, I appreciate you all sitting there. I know it's your job. 1955, I got awakened about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. My dad was in the Navy, he was an airplane mechanic on carriers. And he said, son, you want to go to Okeechobee? That was the first time I was going to get to go with the men, my uncle and him, and the foulest mouthed man I ever was around by the name of Bill Clyde was raised on Terracea Island. And I said, yes, sir. And we piled up in a car. Of course, nobody had a boat back then. Lucky to have a car out of the crew. We came down here, and of course, we stopped at a ditch down on 78 before we got to Diocese. And we tried to fish, but the skeeters were so bad, they just absolutely run us back in the car. And we got back down there, it wasn't daylight yet, so we sat around Dice Ditch, and when it got to be daylight, we all stepped off, and all we did was just step off the bank at Dice Ditch. And of course, it was a waist deep to those grown men, but it was armpit deep to me with my Fluger Akron and the fiberglass rod and split shot and some worms, and we caught shell crackers like you couldn't believe. In the bottom, of course, it was just sand and hard and shell. And there was a big spoil bank that used to run right down Dice Ditch, and it's still there, but it's submerged now. The joke was, I was so little, when they combined the strings of fish, they had me pick them up, and I was trying to pick up this stringer of shell crackers. Well, I don't need to tell you all, those are gone. I haven't seen a shell cracker bed since the tilapia were introduced. I said all that to say, I don't see, we usually have several folks that have a big sign that says stop the spray. So if you're looking for an input from the state, I guess I'm a stakeholder?
Yes, sir.
Is that what we're called? Stop the spray. That's what needs to happen. Now you step off at Diocese Ditch or anywhere else and you're straddle deep in mud and muck that's collecting the poison. And the last time I talked about the geography of this particular state, and it's limestone, and there's holes in it, and all that poison just sifts down through there. And it's going in our aquifers. You know, I had a lot of hope for Governor DeSantis because he was a naval officer too, even though he's a lawyer. I'm finding out he's more lawyer than naval officer, if you want to know the truth. Sad part is, I was hoping that he would really take up a cause. I've written that staff, they never respond. I've written Kaylee Tuck, that staff never responds. So I felt like when they invited me to go, my friends invited me to go tonight, that I was gonna be speaking to the choir, and I am. I do appreciate where y'all are. I worked for the government for a lot of years too. But we had a saying when we planned missions, and I listened to, by the way, that was a good presentation on the plan.
Thank you.
We used to have a plan in North Vietnam every day, twice a day, whether we needed it or not. And we'd say, this is the plan, but the plan goes to hell when the shooting starts. Ladies and gentlemen, the shooting has started out there. This place is dying badly, and we need to do something about it. And I don't know who else but you can do anything about it. And I hope you can keep your jobs by doing it. But we need to stop the death that's occurring in this whole eco chain, from the zooplankton all the way through. He mentioned the shrimp and the crawdads and the salamanders and all those things that live in the marsh. So I'm asking you, please, whatever you can do, try to give us back our lake and the natural. Just one more quick thing. When we stepped off there, we didn't bring anything with us. Now we bring crackers and water and tea and all kinds of sandwiches from Publix and all kinds of crap. Well, back then, first of all, you couldn't afford it. But number two, we drank the water that we were fishing in. And people look at me like, no, that isn't true. Yes, it's true. And if you had Viner sausage, you're really good, because then you could use the can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Tom Harris.
One in 3 Americans have a detectable levels of 2,4-D, a chemical known to cause cancer, birth defects, hormonal imbalances. This chemical can be ingested through the nose, mouth, and skin. As exposure to 2,4-D is an ingredient of Agent Orange. I can go on about the study of this chemical being used on Lake Okeechobee, but I suggest you read the findings of the study from George Washington University. With this being just one of the many caustic chemicals being used, I call for mechanical harvesting to be used more. We've been told it's too expensive, but with one of the side effects being hormonal imbalances in children, I think we can all agree we need to proceed with caution. I propose that for every acre sprayed, we replant an acre of natural submerged vegetation. I think we need no spray zones for fishery and nurseries for waterfowl and fish. We need to be able to have chemical-free habitats for them. If you read FWC's mission statement, I don't feel like this is a big ask. I also would like to see no spraying during waterfowl season and fishing and spawning seasons to help stop the exposure to humans and fish. I also feel we need to open passes along observation shoals so we can restore the natural flow inside the shoal. As I previously stated, we have markers that are not maintained. Most, if not all, have no lights working. I also feel that there needs to be better communication with the stakeholders. You have lost our trust. You say you're listening to the stakeholders who spend a lot more time on the lake, but I don't feel this is happening. This all has to be fixed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Watt, Jim Watt.
Yes, how do you do? I'm Jim Watt. Is this microphone working?
I can hear it. Yes, sir.
Okay. One thing that's come up in here before that you say that mechanical harvesting is too expensive compared to chemical treatments. Well, that isn't true. That's absolutely false. Let me go through a list of things telling you why. The lake, you gotta clean this lake. Everybody says this lake needs to be cleaned. There's tonnage of toxic sludge out there. And each and every day you send those armadas of boats out there spraying, or you send helicopters or even an airplane around spraying, you're creating more. You're creating more. This is billions of dollars it's gonna cost When you already know that, how smart is it to keep contributing to the problem? In other words, you could take mechanical harvesting and stop putting all that toxic sludge on the bottom. Okay, then you have we spend billions of dollars doing that, by the way. That's what it's gonna cost us. The SDAs cost billions, of hundreds of millions, and upwards of $1 billion when you start putting the reservoirs and all that, and that's all to clean the toxic water that's made from spraying. So you cut that out of the equation. Then here's something that y'all are familiar with, Roundup lawsuits and all that. Well, Roundup's candy compared to Aquathol K and Dicot and numerous other chemicals, some Hydrothol 191, all your Endothol products are bad. When you put that into the equation, what's gonna happen, you got these guys out here in giant wind tunnels, airboats, spraying breathing this stuff, getting it on their skin, and at some point, you're gonna end up with massive lawsuits, and that's gonna cost billions of dollars. I've spent an enormous amount of time going through 6 years worth of fiscal records, actually all the records I could get my hands on, involving invasive plant management. And one thing I found in there, what appears to be massive fraud. One of you brought up last time, it costs $2,000 an acre to mechanically harvest, which is a high figure to me compared to what I've seen and what I've talked with these guys tell me. But I found of $18,000 an acre in places, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 an acre for floating plant and SAV, submersible plant common all throughout the thing. What's odd is when you read the cover page, the summary in the front of the fiscal reports, it doesn't come up to that. But when you start running the numbers on this, and it's 17 cents an acre, 42 cents an acre, $7 an acre, and then you got all these big high numbers. So something's going on. This is it inspired a Auditor General's report. That's an investigation that's ongoing now. It's been going on for a while. But also you have lakes that have been sprayed according to the fiscal reports, and I've sent a lot of this over to some of you guys. I've sent some over to Ryan. Ryan's seen some of it, where they're spraying lakes for anywhere from 100% to 4,000%. One lake was in records there of being sprayed. It got sprayed 40 times. And Lake Okeechobee has gone up. Last year received 25% more spray than the previous year, and then the year before 13% more spray. Things are going up, not down.
Yes, sir.
Is my time up?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't want to just cut you off. Mike Nathan. I say that correctly?
Yep.
That's-
All right, well, I listened to your program and I read the plan online. It says a lot about you guys are listening to stakeholders, okay? Everybody in this room knows that that's false, okay? You're not listening to any of us. I was here 3 years ago and this room was completely full and there was standing room only 3 feet deep all around the side of this thing. Not one person said, hey, you guys are doing great. Every single one of the persons that spoke at that meeting said, stop spraying. You're killing the lake. That was 3 years ago. Here we are. We're back again. You guys have time to do this?
No.
No. Are you tired of doing this?
Yes. Thank you.
When are you going to start listening to us? Stop spraying. Okay? All right. Now, the last meeting that we were at, or it was a Zoom meeting, we called and we asked you, Ryan, have you tested any of the fish on the lake? And you gave some bogus answer about, oh, you couldn't find any labs. You remember that? I have it on recording if you'd like me to send it to you. That's what you said. You said that there was no labs available. Okay? Well, I'm a builder. I got better things to do. I think everybody in this room has better things to do. I found a lab that tested 2 fish. Okay? You want to know? And you also said that, no, we don't have to worry about it because the EPA says that, you know, these chemicals don't build up in the flesh of fish. You remember saying that?
Go on.
You did say it. Just admit it.
Go ahead.
You're not going to admit it?
I remember.
I'm not gonna recall a conversation 3 years ago.
Oh,
I remember it.
Does everybody here remember
Yeah,
that?
I remember it.
Okay, it happened. All right, well, we tested 2. I took a biologist, which has a PhD out on Lake Kissimmee. We collected 2 fish, okay, a shad and a catfish. We sent it to the University of Georgia because of Florida doesn't have any labs in here. We already know that, okay? We had them test for diquat, bromide, and glyphosate, okay? Do you want to know how much diquat was in them? The catfish had 2,231 parts per million of diquat. The shad had 3,413 parts per million of diquat. Okay? The catfish had 143 parts per million of bromide, and the shad had 55 parts per million of bromide. Those are chemicals that you put into the lake. We asked the laboratory, did those fish die from that? And their answer was yes. That was high enough for those fish to die. Your chemicals are killing everything in this lake. Okay, you can sit there and say, no, it's not. We have the proof now. We presented this to the August meeting. The biologist that I took out there presented it to the meeting. And you guys haven't done anything. You don't listen to us. Okay? This room's got 1/3 the people that we were here 3 years ago. So you're not listening to us. So quit telling us that you're listening to us. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Paul Gray.
Hi, thank you. Paul Gray from Audubon, Florida. Audubon's a conservation group, and I've been working on Lake Okeechobee for more than 30 years. I'm an ecologist by training. My bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate degrees are all on wetlands and waterfowl and birds. And so I've read all 3 of your plans. I sent a lot of comments on the Kissimmee plan so far. I'm making global comments for the 3 plans. One of the things that are pretty good in these plans is you guys list all the fish and you talk about all the fish, but then you don't list snakes or frogs or turtles or any other taxa. And if you think about all these vertebrates that aren't fish, they all live in the marsh, and this plan is predominantly about the marsh. And so they should be listed. We need a list of every single vertebrate in these lakes. And FWC has a thing called the State Wildlife Action Plan, and it was adopted in 2019. And I went to that, and it lists species of greatest conservation need according to FWC or the Fish and Wildlife Service. And it has these species of greatest conservation need: terrestrial, freshwater, marine. And I looked at the freshwater species of greatest conservation need, and most of them were not even mentioned in any of these plans. Alyssa got black rails on Lake Okeechobee, thank you. But most of them aren't even listed. They're not even considered. And I looked at the bibliography, and that plan's not even mentioned in any of the 3 plans. And there were 27 different FWC people who got credit for helping with these, most of them freshwater managers, and for them to not know or not remember that there's a plan that says these are the species you really need to have needs, that's really a big breakdown. And that's something that these plans have to fix. You really have to expand your coverage of all the vertebrates in these ecosystems. So that's something that we're going to emphasize. Also, a lot of the definitions, the goals and objectives, they have words like healthy ecosystem and sustainable, but there's no definition of what that means. And we would like to see better definitions of when you say, I'm going to make a healthy ecosystem. What is that? How do you define it? does it compare with the pristine system, or what is it? You know, that those things would help everybody understand what you're talking about, because it sounds great, but everybody has a different idea. And then I guess I'll just wrap up. One of the things that we really think would be helpful is for FWC to take all three of these plans and get outside independent peer review. You know, you have a public relations problem with the public, so that would help the public see the outside experts look at your plans and either gave you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or gave you advice. And working in Everglades and working in South Florida, we're used to peer reviews, and they're very useful. Sometimes they can be a little bit painful, but they can just give you outside input that really can be useful. And so we really hope you guys will do that and get these plans reviewed and then be able to adjust them, you know, according to what the reviewers have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Garrett Stewart.
Why all the long faces? Oh man, I'd sure hate to be you guys. But I want to say thanks. As a biologist, I kind of know how things run. A lot of times, the public, we want to put blame on FWC, but the real people we should kind of be yelling at are up in Tallahassee. I seen one of you cool homies today, James, right? Over at the aquaculture that we got going on, as far as we have an awesome way that we're implementing the mechanical harvesting. You know, and not only are we able to take out some of those nuisance weeds, but we're able to apply that on farms, and I think that that's pretty important too, as far as getting rid of some of these legacy nutrients. The spraying, like I'm sure you guys have picked up, it's gotten a little bit out of control. As an algologist, you know, it's simple science. You know, when you see a plant that's underwater, in the water, and it's green, and we spray it and kill it, the things that make it green, nitrogen and phosphorus, all these different things, they end up in our water column, and that ends up making, you know, the water green. We have more algae blooms. But I just wanted to show some support to aquaculture, and as well as a thank you to FWC for getting behind that and showing the support. You know, us working together is how we're gonna always be able to find solutions. You know, and sometimes there's just too many chiefs and not enough Indians, I guess. But thanks, guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Wilson Kendall.
Kendall Wilson.
I apologize. I didn't know.
All good, just some
Sorry about
questions. Why are we having these meetings on weeknights like this? Why aren't we having them on a Saturday when all the stakeholders can attend? All the working class people to use this lake? Any answers? Anybody know the answer to that? That's the way it should be. Everybody works till 5 o'clock and drive 2 hours to get here. It's not, that's why, there'd be 1,000 people here.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I know that's why. It's evident, guys. We know, we see you guys, you say you're trying to help, we don't see no help. All we see is Chinese poison sprayed every day, daily. It's devastated out there. You just sprayed and killed 500 acres or so inside the reef. Any reason why? Any reason why we did that? Thin cattails, they're not gonna burn. Then I just read in the newspaper you wanna spray more cattails in the marsh and burn them. They're not even thick enough to burn. There's no cattails on the west side of this lake that are thick enough that you can't drive an airboat through. 20 years ago, you couldn't drive an airboat through half of them. You've got it beat down so much with poison, and you say, oh, we're gonna spray it and burn it. We just had a cold front. What's the reason to spray it? We had a good frost. I'm sure it's turning brown. If the water drops, burn it. Who has the authority to say, stop the spraying and start mechanical harvesting?
That's what you need to know right there.
Who has that? Who do we point the finger at? Nobody can answer that?
Let that man right there.
So, we're waiting on Jason to direct questions to
I
us.
apologize. I
Come
don't
on.
want- I don't want to cut you off. Yes.
What we wanted to really not get into is back and forth. If you want to ask, who has the authority to stop spraying blanket-wide across the state, then you're gonna have to speak with multiple agencies that are conducting, herbicide use, aquatic systems, like water management district, state parks, et cetera, as well as the agriculture industry. So there's layers to it. None of us here have the authority to say we're gonna stop spraying. We utilize herbicide as a way to manage invasive plants because that's how we are able to manage them based on the technological and financial restraints we have. We had a question earlier about why are the meetings on an evening during the week. We sent out surveys previously when we were gathering input on when to hold various meetings. While some individuals did highlight that they wanted to meet on Saturdays or Sundays, the vast majority preferred weekday evening meetings.
We see those results?
We want to see the results of those
On the
surveys.
survey, Saturday wasn't an option.
Okay, we can see
Okay,
those results.
that's what needs to happen. We need to have surveys. So all the stakeholders, as you call us, can do their input. The answers to the surveys need to be public, not so you guys can hide them. We want to see the answers. That is a very good way to do it. That way, everybody who has a fishing license gets to say something.
We have that information we can provide. Yes, sir.
We want to see it
Yes, sir.
publicly, just if you're commenting on Facebook. You can't hide it. It's all for the public to see.
Yes, sir. I apologize.
I could go on and on.
I apologize for getting your name backwards as well.
All good.
Would Inwood have that information?
I couldn't hear you.
Could we get that information by emailing Inwood? On your sheet?
FWC had it last year or two. They had a big survey.
So both FWC and Inwood, who's working with us on this project, have those survey results. We can, if you request them, we can email them to you, but we'll also make sure to post both of those surveys on our website and let people know where those are so people can view them.
Yes.
So you can email my team or Ryan's team. We'll also publish it on the same lake management plan website. We can publish the raw data. It's a lot, but if you want.
I'm sure everybody on there said stop spraying.
And how many votes are
She was asking a question.
Excuse me. I know, like in organizations, when you ask for your employees to give you input, so you can figure out what's wrong with your system or how you can do things better, you always print that out when you give it to them, because not everybody has a computer. Not everybody's going to be at the meeting tonight and know to ask. So there's got to be a way to publicly release that where people can access it or have it sent to them. I would encourage you to do that as a good faith effort for us.
Okay, we have the data electronically, and so the most obvious and easy way to do that is to provide it via email or post it online or something like that. I'm a little confused about if you're asking for a hard copy.
What I'm asking for is that people that don't have computers or access or are not here tonight have no idea what we're talking about. And it really should be released, because you ask us what we think, and then you try and compile that so you can figure out what you need to do. So you show us that you're trying.
Okay. I will have to get back to you on that. Mostly because I have to figure out a way to get it to somebody.
Jason?
Yes, sir.
So we have multiple communication channels that we can utilize to send out information. Mention the request. If an individual doesn't have access to the internet or computer and they request that document, we do have a public records request process that can be gone through and print that stuff out, send it to folks, so.
What about like the reports that you put out annually that we get to look at? You know, whether it's about the pollution or it's the financials, couldn't you just after you do a survey, have one of those go out the same way and then people could get it? See it in print, you
So
know,
I
it would
think-
actually be a report.
So I think you're talking about the HEMAR system. Ed, you want to break that down, how we have information available to the public on treatment plans and work plans, et cetera? Or-
That's a little tricky to the layperson if they don't know how to look for it, I've got to admit. But once you know your way around in there, at least it would be an annual thing, or it would be a, however often you do a survey. Because you're going through a lot of hoops here to have people come and tell you what they think. And if you're not doing anything with it, it makes people feel like they're not important enough for you to listen. So if they see what you've got and what you're doing, I think it'll improve the customer
Okay.
relationship.
Before, I'll make a note of that, of ways to more proactively send information than have it passively available.
It's a good faith effort.
That's a good comment. We address communication in the plan.
And
That's-
speaking of
thank
the
you.
fiscal report and the,
Yes, sir. Well, I need to stick to the
Okay.
schedule.
Before we get too far off of the question that Kendall asked, who has the authority
So
to,
stuff that's aside from the agenda, like a question on authority or follow-up questions, I'll be happy to hang around after the meeting, chat with folks. I'm sure other FWC biologists would. But let's get through the comments and then we can talk about those kind of
Yeah.
things.
The last card I have is Betty Osceola.
Good evening. My name is Betty Osceola. I'm a member of the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians, for those of you who don't know me. Also, I'm not an avid fisherman on the lake, but I have walked around this lake, all 118 miles of it, twice. So I think I intimately know the lake in that respect. And I understand your jobs are difficult. And understanding bureaucracy, that there is someone else that has that authority. And my nephew, Garrett Stewart, mentioned it earlier. It's Tallahassee. And for those of you members of the public who aren't aware, there is a bill, HB 579 and SB 1128, which directs FWC in partnership with the Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences at the University of Florida and Water School of Florida Gulf Coast University to study nutrient removal technologies and mechanical aquatic plant management techniques within the Lake Okeechobee watershed. So if you want them to get off this chemical spraying, please call all your state legislators and please urge them to pass this bill so these guys have the directive to start looking at alternative methods, because until you put that on them, and they will be required to give a report by a specific date, and it also secures funding for that. And also my nephew mentioned this project that we just came from earlier, the same thing with Mr. Erskine, where they are putting in a pilot project with grant funding to remove what they consider invasive species. Honestly, people, all the two-legged animals in this room are invasive species, so maybe we need to look at that as well. And which is causing the problem for the lake. But that being said, these plants uptake that nutrients out of the water. Those plants aren't your enemy. They're doing a job. They're removing those nutrients. So let's remove these plants in a way that they can be reutilized and those nutrients reclaimed and used elsewhere, which you have some ranchers here in the Okeechobee community have agreed to allow them to apply. Think of a big giant smoothie machine. It's going to pull the plants up, create this smoothie, and they're going to spread it over their ranches to grow hay for their animals. So instead of introducing more nutrients, they're going to remove the nutrients out of this water column. And they are also going to show, using this technology, that they can address that legacy nutrients in the muck as well. So, and I don't agree with injecting anything to the earth, as someone else suggested, but that being said, there are other ways that is better for this lake. And if anyone wants to understand what that project is about, there is a YouTube video called Aquaculture Technologies using the Green Mach 1. It's very good in explaining what it's all about. And those are technologies that will help this lake. And your master plan this plan that you have, I would say if you look at it as healing the lake, you're gonna get somewhere. But if you're looking at managing the lake, you're not gonna get nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to make another comment on it. We talked about the spraying. I'd like to have some reports about what, I've talked about this for the last 15 years. And we still have the same thing, but not any concrete facts about anything. Now, she said something that right there tells us one thing. If you harvest these hyacinths, already you got people willing to put them there. I mean, that wouldn't be a cost. I'm gonna leave my address and stuff with you, and I would appreciate some figures. You say it's a higher price than what we're doing. Some way that would show, and I don't mean harvesting with a machine. I mean the canal systems that bring the hyacinths to the machine. You're not running them down. And I'll leave this, and I'd appreciate it if we have some kind of factual figures that shows that this would be too expensive. I'd suggest probably get a hold of some manufacturers and farm equipment, and they can answer the question for you.
Thank you, sir. That's all the comment cards we have for this evening. I brought back up the contact slide. If anybody wants to snap a picture of that, or doesn't already have that information. Again, there are comment forms available. If you didn't want to speak tonight and you want to submit a written comment, remind you that you can fill that out and mail it in as well, or the email contact information is on that as well, if you want to send it in electronically. I want to thank everybody else for coming. I know this is a big ask, and I know that people obviously are passionate about this system and are deeply invested. So thank you again for your time. Thank you again for coming out, and really have a pleasant, safe evening. Thank you for coming.
Let's see some results.
They must have ordered them lights, China, channel market. That's a fun one.
They said they wanted to hang around and chat.
Oh, yeah.